Yeah, so today we're going to look at a question that was tested in the last sitting, the sitting that has just ended, the December 2023. And this was a question under the core area, under the section 2. Remember, section 1 is the theory, section 2 the core area, and section 3 the application area. So in this case they tested the NPV, the payback period, the profitability index, and the IRR. Yeah, the 4 parameters for measuring the project, evaluation of the project. So the metrics, and I will read the question. Safari Limited is evaluating a project with the following details. So we have investment, and we have the residual value. We have year 1 project cash flow. So this is what we're expecting in year 1. Annual cash flow growth rate from year 2 now. And we have the project life is 5 years. And we have the WCC. Compute the following project metrics: the payback period, the net present value, assume a discounting rate of 12, profitability index, assume a discounting rate of 12%. So using a graph, determine the project internal rate of return. So in this case we shall start with the very first question. I'll do it here. The question for payback, question for payback, the payback period. Let me first highlight these. Normally like using the font 12, the times New Roman, and in this case I just need to say this one they were using. Okay, so we need font 12 so that it can be visible, that way. So I need to get the payback period. Remember, when we talk about the payback period, the shortest duration within which the project can be able to recoup the initial investment. So the amount that we invested, how long shall the project take before we recover the amount? Payback period, you can either calculate the non-discounted or the discounted. In this case it's non-discounted because we have not been given the rate like here, so we shall be dealing with non-discounted, and the period is 5 years. So you'll have here the year, and there are 5 years. 1, 2, and I can pick this pattern, 3, 5. So there are 5 years in that case. And the other thing we have is the cash flow, our cash flow, and our cash flows. We know year 1 is 25 million. 1, 2, 3. Here on we have 25 million, and I can highlight there and use shillings in thousand with 0 decimal place, and it is growing from year 2 at the rate of 10%. So we shall pick this, we multiply by 1 plus, and open this 1 plus this, and this rate will be constant, so I lock that that way, so that you can be able to effect that particular growth rate. And let me see whether it will pick. That one is okay. So that the next one will be K7, so it is picking this by the rate. The other one is this, it is picking K8, this value. So that is it. So the annual cash flow growth. So this will be our cash flows. The cash flows. Then to get the payback period, we just need to get the cumulative cash flow, cumulative is just we add. The first one will be the same value, the second one will be the second plus the first, the initial amount that we had, that way, and I can drag that because it will follow that particular pattern. It will follow that particular pattern. So you'll find that the third, it has picked K8, this one, plus L7, and L7 is this. The next one, you will find that it has picked K9. K9 is this value, and it has added the L8, this one. Yeah, that will be our cumulative cash flow. Remember, our initial cash flow, the amount that we need to recoup is 100,000. So we need to ask ourselves, how many years are we taking to recover 100,000? We just come to cumulative. Year 4, we are getting 116. So this one already is past. It means we shall take 3 years. Yeah, 3 years here, plus the balance here. We have the balance here. Yeah, we shall take the balance because here we have 82. So to get 100, our payback period, PBP, payback period will be 3 years first, and this will be 3 years. We add 3 years and what? So the balance here, we need 100 minus 82 so that we know how much we are getting from this. So this will be equals to 100,000. I'll put in bracket so that we know the decimal, how many decimal or how many months shall we have. 1 2 3 100 million, and I'll minus this value. Yeah, minus this value, and we shall divide the proportion because we shall get it from the year 4. We shall get it from year 4, the 33 to 75. We divide by that, and we'll find that it's giving us one what? Not supposed to be one. Okay, let me see that one. So it is rounding it off. Yeah, it's supposed to be 0.52. It's not 1. When you put it in 1 decimal, that's when you will get that. But we are using the 2 decimal, so that means our payback period will be equals to 3 point. This will be 3.52 years. Yeah, 3.52 years. That is the period the project will be able to take for us to recover the amount that we had invested. So 3 years 0.52, 3 years 0.52, so 3.5 years. Yeah, 3.5. Within a period of 3.5 years, we shall be able to recover our initial investment of 100,000. Remember, here we don't consider the residue. We don't consider the residual value. So we go to number 2. We are done with the first one. Number 2, we need the net present value. And we're told to assume what? A discounting rate of 12%. So here our WCC will be 12%. 12% there, 12%, and therefore we shall have the year. Can have year 0, year 1, year 2, and it will continue. So here you need just a value, a number. Okay, so it's not responding. Okay, yeah, just general that way. So you need up to year 5. Yeah, that way. So those are our years that we have already. We have already projected our cash flow. Already have put our growth, or I can just still do it here. There will be no problem with that. So our cash flow for year 1, we had this value. We had 25. Year 2, we took this and we multiplied by 1 plus the growth rate, and we locked the growth rate. The growth rate was locked, and here we drag autofill this, and when you autofill, you will find that, yeah, that way. So that is our values, that is our cash flows that we have, and we'll find that in these question that we had, there was no what, it's only the residual, there is no tax. Yeah, so already we know our cash flow, which is growing at the rate of 10%, and we know our residue. Our residue, in this case, we shall not calculate, just a minute, and adjust these values so that they just remain to be just numbers, just need to be numbers. And this one to be just a number. That way. And here you will find that we don't have tax, so we shall not calculate depreciation. I'll just include my residue, value, and my residue will come to the last year. Residue is what you shall get after the end. You get your values here, our cash flow that we shall discount. So we have residue and we have the initial. The initial investment. The initial investment, and the initial is for year 0. So year 0 we have 100,000 for year 0, 100,000 our initial investment, that way, so that our cash flows here, just add all of them that way. I'll drag these that way. That will be our cash flow. You can use the top and bottom border. So our NPV will be NPV equals to NPV. Our rate is 12. Now values starting from year 1 to year 5, and we minus the initial of 100, and we get that we have an NPV of 13,365. Yeah, 13,365 as our initial. So that that is number 2. Number 3, we need to get the profitability index. Profitability index, that is PI. And remember, for PI we shall be basing on what already we have done here, because PI equals to present value of cash inflows, present value of cash inflows over PV over cash outflow, PV of cash outflow. So present value of cash inflow over present value of cash outflow. So our PV of inflow, PV of cash, PV of cash inflows is whatever we have calculated here, and I can just calculate using the NPV. Let me see whether it will change. My rate is 12. I put a comma and I take these values and I close that and I enter, and I just need it to be in just a number. Yeah, that way, 13, 113. This is our present value of cash inflow, because when you minus 100,000, that's when you're getting 13,365. You get 13,365. And there is the other longer way of dividing by the rate, but still will arrive at the same answer. So our PV is 113,365. So that our PI, therefore our profitability index, will be present value of inflow and divide by present value of outflow, and you'll get to have a PI of 1.13333. that is our present value, the present value of 1.1333. yeah, that way. Then number 3 of our question, using a graph, determine the project internal rate of return. Yeah, determine the project internal rate of return, the IRR, and in this case our IRR, but here we need to use a graph to determine the project IRR. Ideally our IRR, without using the graph, if we are to use the formula, it has just proved that, because IRR is a point where we call it the break-even point, where the present value or the NPV is 0. At IRR is when the NPV is 0, that is the point where we get the IRR. So IRR, using the formula IRR, we just take the values, and because this one is a negative, this one I'll include a negative. Okay, if I include this to be a negative, I'll do some adjustment so that here we shall add instead of minusing. I'll adjust that, we shall add that, and here we shall that is our PV. Here we shall divide by a negative, so that it turns out to be a positive. yeah, that way, so that here it will be IRR. I will tab, I take the values. IRR uses all the values that we have, yeah, that way, and I enter. Yeah, so our IRR is 17%, because even if you use what we call a guess, so assuming here still I can do something else. IRR, they normally need the values and the guess, so you can assume this one as our values, and I put a comma. If the guess is the initial, remember we normally use a iterative method. I can guess to be the first rate to be 5%, assuming the first rate is 5%, and I close that. You'll find that still, with or without the guess, it gives you the same value of 17% as our IRR. So this one is using now the formula method, but here we need to use a graph. Use a graph to determine the project IRR. Remember, I have said IRR is when the NPV is 0, so we shall have our rate and our NPV. So I'll have the rate to be, I can have 0%, I can have 5%, I can have 7, with no any order, 7%, can have 10, can have 12, can have 14, can have 15, you can have 17, you can have a 20. Let me use the last one as 20. These are just guesses, yeah, whereby you need to calculate NPV at each particular level. NPV at each particular level, at each particular level. Remember, already we know our cash flow. We know our cash flow. Our cash flows already we know. So here I will use the cash flows that we had in Roman 2. Our NPV is equals to NPV. I will tab. My rate will be this. I put a comma, and my values will be this one. This will be my values that I have, and I will find that I lock them. I will fully lock those ranges, and yeah, that way. I close the bracket and I add the initial. I add the initial, and again the initial I will fully lock it. The only thing that will be changing here is the rate. And you'll find that at 0 our NPV will be 62. I'll drag that way. Yeah, that way. And you'll find that in this case that will be our NPVs, and you can find at 12 that we had as our discounting rate, 13,365. Already we have that. 987. At 17 we are having this, and this one, if we can increase the decimal, can find that it is 16 point something. Yeah, 16.75. 16.75. Whatever I was to include it here, to me add here, I have this one of 16.75. 16.75 with the 2 decimal, and I fill this. You'll find that it will give you as 0. The NPV here will be 0 at this particular rate of 16.75, or even without that. Yeah, without that we'll find that this 17, it's almost yeah, the 17 is almost, whereby if I can decide to increase this, but this one now, it will just remain at that level, yeah, at that level. But at 16.75, it is the one that is giving you that particular value. Then we need to plot this, the rate vis-a-vis the NPV, and I will highlight this because we needed to show the graph. Yeah, using a graph determine the project internal rate of return. So I will go to insert, and we shall go to recommended. We find the best that will be able, yeah, we can find this one. I think the first one already is picking that particular value. I will go with that. This one can fix it here, and you will find that already this one is showing us here at 17 is if I can increase this, let me see whether when I increase at 17 this point, let me see which one will be better off. Yeah, can use this one. You'll find that we have the negatives there. Let me see. chart title is there, axis title. Yeah, so here is our, you can add the title. Here is our NPV. This is our NPV, and here is our IRR. Yeah, that way. And is there anything else to add? I think that's all. So needed a point where the IRR, so that is at 15, at 17. Yeah, you can see this one at 17 is where we are having 0, approximately 17. Yeah, where we have at 0 when NPV is 0. Yeah, when NPV is 0. So our IRR, so when you look at this one that we had here, if you can round it off, it will give you, here we have 2 points. First one is 17, that has a negative, and the second one is a rounded off figure, but still is a 17, approximately 17%, approximately 17%, this one now. And that is the graph that was supposed to be used there to determine the IRR. Remember, we are saying IRR is a point. IRR is the point. Is a point where NPV is 0. NPV is 0. When the NPV is 0, that is the point that will get your IRR. NPV is 0, you get your IRR. So specifically it was 16.75, or you get exactly when you round it off. But with the 2 decimal, if you have to use 2 decimal places, then you'll get exactly at that particular point is where you are getting your IRR. Need to see whether I can change this particular design. The design, yeah, let me see this one. Yeah, even this one is okay. There is none that you cannot use. Yeah, that first point is a point that we needed, that point, and that's how the question was supposed to be calculated. Yeah, the question was having 3 parts: the payback, the net present value, profitability index, and the graph for IRR. The graph for IRR, we have done the payback period, we have done the NPV, and in this case we did not have the tax rate. Without the tax rate, you have gone just directly to get our cash flow, the residue, and we have minus the initial, where we have gotten our NPV there. Then you have gotten the present, the profitability index, which is a PV of cash inflow over PV of cash outflow. We have gotten our PI there, and using the graph, we have been able to determine our IRR. Thank you.